you.
And
all with you. Let us pray. O God of unchangeable power and eternal life, look favorably upon your whole church, that wonderful and sacred mystery. By the effectual working of your providence, carry out in tranquility the plan of salvation. Let the whole world see and know that things which were cast down are being raised up, and things which had grown old are being made new, and that all things are being brought to their perfection by him through whom all things are made. Your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. It's one of my favorites, and I don't get to pray it because it's in the ordination. So I wanted to share it this morning. Next on our agenda is to appoint a clerk of meeting, and our clerk of meeting is online, and she has agreed to take this. This is Beth McKnight. Beth, do you accept being clerk today?
Say yes, Beth.
Well, can you hear us, Beth?
Yeah,
Can you hear us? I just want to make sure that Beth can hear us, that she's taking minutes. Beth, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear. Thanks.
Okay, so I think maybe standing closer to this might help. Okay, next on our agenda is to approve last year's minutes. Did anyone have any suggestions or changes? Mary Jean?
It said that there are two senior wardens in the, and it needs to, because it said senior warden Felicia nominated Jen Freeland, and then senior warden Felicia nominated Mark Donovan.
Ah, okay.
And then it also said up above too, that Jen Freeland was senior warden 1 year term, Mark Donovan senior warden 1 year term.
It's on page 4 of the annual. Of the annual.
Are the minutes from last
Of the
year's?
minutes, yeah, it was on page 4 of the annual report, just where the minutes are.
Okay.
And it was just a couple of typos.
Okay, Beth, I just wanted to make sure you heard that. On page 4 of the annual meeting minutes from last year, there are several people called the senior warden who were not the senior warden in 4 places. So that'll be a correction. 2 places? 2 places. Mark both times was called senior. Okay, thank you for that correction. Any other corrections?
I have one.
Okay.
I have one.
Okay, Judy.
In the minutes, it lists my personal email address, and I prefer that not to be put out anywhere. And
Okay.
at that time, I didn't have the St. Paul's one, but I do now. So that could
Okay.
replace it.
So we can make that, since it's available online, we can make that change right away.
Okay, thank you.
Other corrections, changes? Thank you for those 2. All in favor of passing last year's annual meeting minutes with those amendments, please raise your hand. Looks like that passes. Thank you.
Was there a motion?
I asked everyone, there wasn't a motion.
I moved.
Okay, Sarah Jameson moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Betsy Kelly seconded.
Thank you.
And we already voted, so. Okay, next up is Mark Donovan with a report from the junior warden.
I'm going to try and read this so I don't miss any of my points here.
I thought we might need to get closer to, or louder too.
I'll try and speak very loud and be close to the microphone right now. So thank you again for all being here. I know this is a time out of your Sunday, and this is really important to the community here. So thank you. I want to talk through the listening sessions that we had earlier this year. So we held a number of those sessions. Most of you joined and gave your contributions. And what we really were trying to do is understand kind of 3 things from our congregation. What is the DNA of St. Paul's? What are you already doing that you're passionate about, and how St. Paul's can fuel that? And then what problem in the wider community would you like to address? And how can we work together to find those solutions amongst ourselves? So what we heard back from that So among the many adjectives that we did here, used by you to describe our community, two themes really stood out, head and shoulders above the rest. Those were welcoming and resilient. So St. Paul's is welcoming and St. Paul's is resilient. Again and again, I heard stories here about how inviting, supportive, warm the interactions of the new members, that the new members had with each of you were. You and the people around you make this community a place where people are welcomed as family rather than friends right from the start. There's a hymn out of Chicago in the late 1960s that says, "They'll know we're Christians by our love." And St. Paul shows that love through its open, nothing held back embrace of all comers. St. Paul is resilient. We've overcome much in the last handful of years, relocating, COVID, leadership changes to name but a few of the recent ones. And resiliency isn't a thing that we aspire to anymore. It's a fact of who we are. This last year brought its own challenges and changes, and each of you responded with open hearts to those in our community, those in our pews, and those in our faith partnership. The toughness out of which this resilience springs is a testimony to me, personally, that St. Paul's has what it takes to make a difference in the lives it touches, come what may. We also asked you what you're already doing that you're passionate about in life, how St. Paul's can fuel that passion. So while there were many answers to this question, again, a couple of things stood out. The first thing you were passionate about was outreach in our local communities and inreach into the heart of St. Paul. So in response to what we heard, the vestry this year put together an outreach committee that's been charged with identifying 5 agencies that St. Paul could support or partner with, which are in line with what you said in this listening session. This short list of agencies is then going to be narrowed down to one with the help of your vote. As a direct result of those listening sessions, the vestry voted to approve a new grant of around $40,000 as a grant to be used by this organization that's voted in as part of St. Paul's outreach. This money will come from our investment fund as apart from other ministry and mission efforts and represents around 1% of the fair market value of that investment. So the first outreach committee meeting was held last week. The committee's already spoken with United Way and the Community Engagement Foundation of Northern Colorado. Committee members have also recently attended an event to familiarize themselves with agencies that are working in our area and better understand the needs of our local community. So more to come on that. We're really excited about the project. We think that we can make a difference in direct response to what you said. Second thing we heard from you is that we need more communication from the vestry. As the first step towards providing additional communication, the vestry's begun publishing monthly meeting agendas in the Episcopal. We'll also be discussing ways to give more visibility to vestry meeting discussions and church financial statements. We look forward to increasing the visibility to what's being discussed and decided in this upcoming year. So heard you loud and clear on that. We need more information, we need more communication. We're working towards providing that visibility. The third thing we heard from you is that music is important. Brainstorming session with members of the congregation was held, yielding mixed results. Positively, parishioners were able to submit their favorite hymns and songs. And we've already gotten the opportunity to enjoy their incorporation into our worship services. And we're also getting the band, choir, back together. Rehearsals are going to be held once a month, beginning this week on the 25th at 6:30 p.m. Come make a joyful noise with us. There's been expressed desire to bring in outside guest musicians for services or events as well. The present budget doesn't have funding that's set aside for this, and it's likely not going to be that gets funded this year, given the current budget. Now, additional avenues to bring music to the congregation or congregation to the music are being explored with the community.
We did fund $3,500.
There you go.
Just to clarify, for music.
Perfect. All right. So to reiterate, we did fund $3,500. And that in my notes. So the third set of questions we asked was, what problem in the wider community would you like to address, and how can we work together to find those solutions? So the themes that emerged from your responses in this area highlighted a desire to continue continue leaning into our faith partnership community, providing education opportunities for ourselves in the community, and giving back to our local community. So a lot of community. If you don't read the epistle regularly, I genuinely encourage you to take 5 minutes to browse it each week. There's so many wonderful things that are going on in there that you can be a part of. These are tied directly to the passions that you've all expressed. I had a note in here about what all those were. As I started going through that epistle, I stopped making a list because there were probably 15 or 20 of them that were already listed on there. Genuinely encourage you to take a look at that. People are out there building things. People are out there making things. People are out there reading and learning and enjoying, joining in music and art and fellowship and community and prayer, all sorts of stuff that are directly tied to the passions that we heard in those listening sessions from all of you. And so as I step down from the junior warden position this year, I can say that things are looking positive to me as we head into the new year with our faith partners. There's a renewed energy and commitment between our leadership groups and the members of each congregation, and a shared desire to do good in the world with our collective gifts. Here's my list of things that I'm going to say this list just because I think it highlighted for me this thing that's going on. We had some movies, some education opportunities, some dinners, writing, flowers, travel, building, prayer book groups, feeding the hungry, fellowship, contemplative art, and ministry, just to name a handful in the minute or two that I browsed through the epistle this week. So check them out. You're looking for a place to belong that helps you feed your passions and bring life to the world. I suspect you might find just that already here. So check it out. Thank you again so much for your feedback and engagement in the listening sessions this year. And we'll continue to explore ways to respond to what we heard in those sessions in the upcoming year. Thanks.
So if you got a chance to read the annual report, you will recognize all of the ministry that is taking place at St. Paul's. And I want to thank Lori Goodham for the Herculean effort to put this together. It is no small task, and I know that she was delighted to push send and get it out from under her to-do list on Thursday. I wrote in this a rector's report, and I'm just going to briefly touch on some of the highlights of that. One of the things I started with was reviewing the year and talking about the things that stood out to me. We had 2 prominent deaths in our congregation this year, and we said farewell in a lovely way, and there's a hole here by their absence, and we miss them dearly. And yet this community rallied and participated in that beautiful liturgy of grief and goodbye. And we had 2 baptisms this year. Bree and TJ were baptized at a joint service, and it just made me think of that circle of life, having 2 deaths and 2 baptisms, and I was so thankful that that occurred. We had the listening sessions that Mark mentioned, where we listened to you. That's not going to be the last time we do that. I thought we learned a lot of great things from you and acted upon those, as Mark has mentioned and Jan will mention again in her report. When I reflect back about the year, one of the things I was surprised about, but I don't know why I should be surprised, was how much effort and work and time our faith partnership took. As I said in my letter, in any relationship, you have good years, and then you have challenging years. This last year for us and our faith partners was a challenging year, and it took a lot of time and attention to make amends, to listen, to apologize, to try to better understand one another. And I am so thankful for the vestry and their willingness to do this hard work and put in the time. Feelings got hurt. and yet apologies were made. We read an apology letter from Trinity that they sent to us, and we also had apologized to them. We had some missteps, and a lot of work was put into mending those. So Jan is going to speak a little bit about some of the outcomes of that, specifically a lease that we approved as our vestry, and Trinity's council has approved. And they have to, of course, take it before a congregational meeting, but we are taking steps in repair in our relationship with them. So thank you, vestry, for that. I also mentioned in my letter 2 things that I get to do in committing to future ministry for me in the long haul. And one is Credo, which is offered by the Episcopal Church for clergy. This will be the 3rd time I've been able to take part in Credo. And the last 2 times were really significant in where my ministry went afterwards. So I'm looking forward to that. That's in October of this year in California. And it looks at spiritual health, medical health, psychological health, all of those things. So it's a wonderful week with other clergy. Okay. The other is sabbatical. This in terms of our letter of agreement, every clergy in the Diocese of Colorado has a template, and included in that template is a sabbatical after 5 years. And I will reach 5 years in August of this year. The plan is to take sabbatical in 2025 for 3 to 3.5 months. And I want to name something that I've heard. And that is fear that I'm going to leave after I get back. And that's not unfounded fear, because that is what happened after your last clergy person took a sabbatical and left pretty quickly afterwards. I started my letter by saying how incredibly thankful I am to be at St. Paul's, how I have never been more fulfilled in my vocation as a priest as I am right now. I have no intention of going anywhere. This is to rejuvenate and to reflect and to rest. I told Jan, as senior warden, that if I would love to retire out of St. Paul's if I got my druthers, if my plan wasn't interrupted in any way, as long as I do not retire in place. And if any of you see that I'm doing that, I'm not engaged, I want you to tell me. But if I had my druthers, I would retire out of St. Paul's. So I want to alleviate your fears about that, and I appreciate you naming them. One other thing with regard to sabbatical, in 2016, I was awarded a Lilly grant to take a sabbatical when I was at St. Bridget Episcopal Church. And 2 things that Lilly has discovered in all of their years of providing sabbaticals for many clergy: you can only apply once or receive it once. They've learned that they had to put in a stipulation that a clergy member has to stay 18 months post getting back from their sabbatical. And they also started to realize that the congregation really needs to be doing some work as well. When a clergy person is away, maybe a project, maybe a discussion, maybe something that they're working on, so that when I come back and we come back together, we have something to share with one another about what we've learned. And so I thought I wanted to bring those 2 things into this conversation. But I look forward to the sabbatical, yes, but I also look forward to coming back. So thank you for all that you do to make this parish what it is. I think St. Paul's is a pretty amazing place, and I'm delighted to be here.
Speaking on your behalf, we're delighted to have you. Adding to Felicia's discussion about the 301 Faith Partnership, in the middle of July, we had a retreat among all the faith partners in an evening meeting with Pastor Ernesto Medina
who also facilitated our vestry retreat, a brilliant facilitator, I might add. It was raw and good. We had honesty and I think some resolution, especially you all got the report. It was mailed. The report was a joint report. Every congregation, every member of every congregation got the same summary report. That took a little doing. And subsequent to that, we did receive a letter of apology from Trinity, which I think was a milestone in our relationship. Recently, at Mary Magdalene's and St. Paul's request, we have entered into a lease agreement with Trinity. We asked for some stability, some certainty. And so the proposal was a 2-year lease. We asked if we could have 1 year with an automatic renewal to a second year. And during that second year, it would be possible for either party to terminate the lease with a 3-month notice. But we felt it was important, given the fact that Trinity has work to do. And we want to see that that work is happening. So we just established that year milestone, that we will be assured that Trinity is working on their own health, actually. It's hard to see churches decline. And St. Paul's has been through the process, not of decline, but of a major change. And Trinity is not. And so we need to patiently love them through that and help them work to be a healthier congregation. So that is basically the term of the lease. When we got the lease, I sent it to a friend of mine who's a real estate attorney. And her first comment was, that is a very friendly lease. Mm-hmm. They began the lease, and we can send that to everybody, with scripture, which is a very good sign. And then we made a couple of changes. So essentially, we will be paying a set amount every month, rather than tied to pledge and plate. So we will know every month what the amount is. And that also means that we will not be paying for extra maintenance. The air conditioning goes out. We are not responsible for any share of that. We did agree, because we are half the organ, we did agree that we will contribute to the regular maintenance of the organ at an amount not to exceed $1,500. Thank you, Jim Steinborn. I originally said, well, not to exceed 5,000. When Jim asked me where I got that number, I said, out of the air. So 1,500 is the not to exceed every year that we will support, and that's a sum certain. So we'll move forward with that. Mary Magdalene will also have a lease separate from ours, and their terms are their terms. Trinity, yes.
And just for clarification, when you're talking about the 2-year lease, is it 2024 and 2025?
Yes, and they're, no, the lease will take effect once their congregation votes on it, which will be March 3rd. As a show of good faith, we've already started to pay that new amount, and just to keep our record keeping easier as well. You're welcome. Yes.
Then what's beyond 2 years?
There's a committee for that. Do you want to be on the vestry?
We'll get spat out of a whale. I No.
Okay.
No, but Trinity has said in their published newsletter or weekly epistle, I don't call theirs their epistle, but that they will be doing the work of discernment as to whether they want to enter into a long-term partnership with us.
Right.
So that is their work over the next 2 years.
Okay.
It's the long-term relationship that we need to know. And it will take them, and Pastor Ernesto said that, it will take them a year or so to really figure that out and do the work to discern if they are interested. And as you recall, when we had the meeting, when we got to read that letter of apology, separating partnership from property is really important to do. So the partnership is strong. Every congregation will say that. We love the partnership. It's their sensitivity to the property that is the issue. And that's a grieving process, as you all have just very plainly been through. Trinity has a new council president, and we had an opportunity to meet with them. Tim and Felicia and I met with Eric Jurgensen, the new council president, and Renee, the treasurer, and Pastor Rick, to talk about why we wanted 1 year and then the second year. And we were very encouraged. Tim, where are you? Thank you, Tim. I'm looking right at you. He is committed to that congregation doing the work. So we were very, very encouraged with his youth, but experience, energy. We feel good about that. Any other questions before we do elections and then the treasurer's report? What's next? I don't need it. Any questions other than? Thank you. We got our.
Next on the agenda is budget presentation with Jeannie and.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, I know it's everybody's, I'm the least favorite thing.
I would never include my comments by saying, church, you rock.
All right, so in the back of the room, do you guys want me to, I'm gonna just briefly do 2023 final, if that's okay? In a few minutes. Report, okay. So hopefully in the back, I don't know if there were enough copies, if we had a chance to see what the final treasurer's report. It includes a narrative on the front, our full list of financials, and then there's I think a separate file that was back there showing the budget for the new year. So if you need some light reading for bedtime to put you to sleep, feel free to read that. So just really quickly for our full year-end annual report, our investment proceeds are from the property proceeds. Our investments were are there currently at, as of the end of December, they were at 4.24 million, which is about $517,000 higher than where we ended 2022. So 2023 is a much better year, and we finally recouped those losses from 2022. So that's really good news. So we're back to where the principal balance was. And as Mark mentioned, beginning in Q4, the vestry voted to start taking that a distribution from that to pay towards outreach. And we're going to also use that distribution to pay for our diocesan and Front Range region pledges that happen every year. So the total of those two together, with the Front Range region, the diocese pledge, and the outreach that we're giving away, is 2% of the market value of the investments, and it's going to be about around $80,000. The part that we're giving away to other people is the 1% that Mark talked about in his report. Our operations and pledges, our revenue, not including other income areas, came in just under budget for the year by a couple $1,000s. But our operating expenditures ended the year under budget also by $2,000. So we actually ended the year basically what we would call break even. $365 of net income, which is amazing and great. And we just, I mean, talk about nailing it on the head there with great donations by the parish, as well as good prudent management by the vestry and making some tough decisions for the year. So it's great news that we hit it on the head right there. Our unrestricted net assets are kind of, I've talked about this for a few years now, should be thought of as kind of like a rolling savings account or reserves. The technical accounting term is unrestricted net assets, but it's kind of like a long-term reserves. So I'm pleased to report that we have a value of $42,000 at the end of the year in unrestricted net reserves. And that gives us about 3 years of reserves. If we look at what our budget is for 2024 and the deficit that we have, that the vestry has passed in the budget, it gives us about 3 years of reserves. Any questions on the 2023 report or anything in particular that anybody would like me to highlight? Or online? Anybody, I guess online is here. All right. If anything comes up later as you're, again, doing your nighttime reading for the joy of numbers that I'm sure that you all have like me, please feel free to reach out to me later. You can find me in your parish directory to ask later. All right, I will move on to the budget then. Everybody can pull out their budget spreadsheet. For 2024, this is the budget that was passed by the vestry. I'll just highlight a few items in here. The gray column, if it came out gray on your side too, well, very light gray, it looks like. That's the new budget for 2024. I have also on this report last year's 2023 budget, as well as the final 2023 numbers. So the total revenue in pledges and plate offerings that we have budgeted is 266,000, I think is what it says. 6 and the 8s, right? 266,000. We are planning for a 4% increase in salaries for clergy, as well as for staff. There was a member of the staff that declined, but we planned on that. As far as Felicia's sabbatical that she talked about, something that we've done in the past and decided to do again this year is kind of try to spread out the cost of that sabbatical by recognizing half of the cost of supply clergy in 2024 that we're going to be spending in 2025, and then we'll recognize the other part of that expense in 2025. Now, we won't be sending money out anywhere. It's just kind of a note-keeping version. We call it an accrued expense in accounting, but it's kind of a way to mentally say we're going to have this expense in the future, so we're going to set some money aside this year. So that's about $3,700 in our budget this year. We do have that $3,500 for music and choir for special musicians, Easter, Christmas, maybe some other performances. And let's see. We did, I believe, go back up to the full 10% diocese pledge and 5% front range region is what we have in that budget. We were 10% this last year. We were 10% the last year, but I think in the front range region we were at 1.5. Thank you for that. We are budgeting for a new Chromebook for the office administrator, which it's probably replacing a 20-year-old computer maybe. I don't know that it's been replaced, I think, since the entire time I've been a parishioner. So quite a long, so more than overdue. And that's going to make it easier, I'm hoping, for Wealtha or somebody to work at home when there's ice on the roads and it's dangerous to come in the office. So so we've got a little budget for that. And where that gets us to with our total expenses in operating expenses is operating expenses of just under $319,000, which if you'll compare to the revenue of the 266, our operating deficit is passed at $52,000. However, I want to also say that operating budget includes the diocesan pledge payments in the operating budget because that's where it belongs. And if we pull out those pieces, it's a net deficit of $12,600 that we're budgeting for. Now, the way it's going to show up on our accounting records is going to be funky. I had to think about it, how we were going to run it through by taking with the investments, and I had to work it through in my head how the accounting, the debits and credits were going to work to do this with the investment money and have it show up in the operating budget where it's supposed to be. I had to run it by the bookkeeper and be like, am I thinking about this right? I think I'm not sure about this last piece, but I think that this is where it belongs. So I won't put all you guys through that pain, but just know it's funky. Okay. I had to think about how it was going to go into these things. What you're going to see in our monthly reports that come out in the epistle is you're going to see this $52,000. Okay, because the expense for diocese and pledges has to show up in our operating expenses. But since we're taking a drawdown, a distribution from our investments, that's not income. That's not counted as income, so it's not part of that 266. It's a separate pot of money. It's taken out over there, but because we count the fluctuations when the market goes up and the market goes down, we count all of that as income. So that shows up down in the designated income section, which if you look for the last year, I think the last page of our fiscal year 23 reports show, without the yellow mark on your side, shows what our designated assets are. That's where you're going to see the payments for the diocese and the Front Range region showing up. So it's kind of in that restricted section, although the income is going to show up in that restricted section, but the expense is going to show up in our operating. So it's funky. Just wanted to highlight that for folks. Any questions on that? Yes, Terry.
Under clergy salary and benefits, doesn't the discretionary, the reference discretionary, come under that somewhere?
It's not clergy salary or benefits, but it is under, we are, let's see. I think it's in outreach is where we put the rector's discretionary funds down. Let's see.
57.
Yes, 5070.05. It's under RDF because we had too many things called rector's discretionary fund. RDF. So we did put that back in the budget this year for $1,500. So a little bit to go to that each month. It's going to go in there, and then we would have transitioned back to the third Sunday loose plate offerings or anything that's not with pledges. That's going to automatically start going into the rector's discretionary fund. And if you would like to donate to the rector's discretionary fund specifically, just write that on your check, or send a note. If you make electronic payments, send a message to the church office and say, hey, I just sent in a check for this or an electronic payment. Please put that to the rector's discretionary fund, and we'll make sure it gets there in the meantime, in between. Does that answer your question, Terry? Okay.
Janine, can't you do that on a monthly basis? You remember doing that last year.
Personally, on a monthly basis, you can do it as often as you want, or electronically.
My pledge is taken out, but you can also.
Sure. Yes, you can. You can contribute on a monthly basis. Yes, as part of your pledge.
Electronic.
How you set up the electronic payments through Venmo? I'm going to let Lori talk about that one because I haven't done. That's not how I pay. So I think you help some other people with that.
Can we do that offline, or does everybody need to?
Well, I'd like to make a general announcement about it. So you go to the website and click on donate, and that will take you to or click on give, and that will take you to the place where you do it. But please be aware that if you change your pledge amount, if you've changed it this year, be sure that you go into Vanco and cancel your old payment. I wound up paying 3 times this month because I didn't know that, so.
So maybe start by canceling.
Cancel everything, yes.
Start by canceling all of it first, and then after it's all canceled, then set it up to go out. I pay through my bank's website. Does that answer your question, Nancy? Okay. Yes. Great.
Am I reading it correctly? The line 5100 buildings and grounds 45,000 and 57. That's what we're going to be paying essentially as rent
Yeah,
In 5150, we budgeted $40,200, which is a portion of the total buildings and grounds. So it's a line up, per the proposed lease, and I think that's
that's the
31,
least.
3150 a month, I think is what that is, if I recall.
Yes. That's,
Account number
that
5150.
is,
That's what that rent is, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few other expenses in there, like insurance, repairs, if we have any repairs with our office or computers or something else, or chairs, then we've got a little bit in there for that. Yes, Mark?
The, our revenue, so, from, what last year, we're talking a $30,000 drop, or whatever the exact number is. So does that reflect less pledges or just difference in pledges?
We had some people move away,
Okay.
and relocate. And we had, a couple of those deaths, as well as Felicia mentioned.
Okay.
So I don't believe there's been, I think you said there's a net 2 increase in people in attendance, I guess, but I'm not sure on the pledge numbers.
will show an increase of 2,
2 people.
but several lost, and those who moved and died represented 30,000.
Well, but do you remember when pledges were coming in quantity of pledges if compared to prior year? Pretty close to what it was in the year past. So accounting for. Okay, great.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else? Have questions?
I have a question, Paul Kelly online. And the question is that pot of gold that we have, the 4 million and change, I assume that's invested through the Episcopal Church and their funds. I think we probably have options in what funds we choose to have that money invested in. Are you looking at a rebalance this year, or are you continuing with the same percentages you had last year?
Good question. So you're correct, that money is invested with Episcopal Church Foundation, and they have State Street Advisors being the advisor on the money. We gave them, we have the money split into 2 funds, and this was because that was the best information that we had at the time that we invested. The biggest thing one of the biggest things decisions you gotta make when investing is how long are you gonna be investing it for? When do you need that money to come out? And that took a really long time for this parish to decide when they were gonna need the money, if they were gonna need it in 90 days, or if they were, it was gonna not be touched for several years. So we finally got to a place for that, and we have it split into 2 things. One was called a 2-year fund, and one we called what we'll need in 4 or more years. So we call it the 4+ fund. That's where we got to at that time. The 2-year fund is invested more conservatively. The 4+ year fund is a little bit more aggressive, but not that aggressive. So we set those up. We don't have any other information from the vestry that our time horizon has changed for that. So we have not changed our time horizon. And after giving the time horizon, we also said we wanted to invest in ESG funds, if you're familiar with that term, environmental, social, and governance related funds. It's making sure that there's, the money of things that we're invested in are better for the environment, are better on a social perspective. Companies that are paying attention to those things. So we have a focus on that in our investments, because that's something that's been important to this parish. And then we let State Street Advisors do their thing. We let the investment managers do their thing, make their decisions. If we have a change in our time horizon or a change in ESG, then we can notify them and they can adjust, but otherwise we let them take care of things. The 2% that we are having them take distributions out is, it's 2% multiplied by the fair market value of both of those funds. But when we take the cash out, we're only taking it out of the 2-year fund. And we have lots of dividends and things that are getting distributed. So there is, now that they know that we're doing that, they're able to manage the portfolio to be able to make adjustments and know when things are coming up and when they'll be making those distributions.
Do you know what the returns of those 2 different funds were last year?
I don't think we had, let's see, I think we just got those. I'll have to report out to those when we, in the next few weeks in the epistle. I don't remember what they were off the top of my head. And Bethany, I think, is the only one that took a look at that. But they were up a lot because we made up our losses from 2022, so it was up quite a bit.
Just a quick comment on ESG. So Beth is kicking me in the shins right now, but I understand that may be a priority for the parish. But the investment industry is certainly going away from ESG. People are taking their money out of those funds. I'm not sure it's the best place for us from a financial point of view to get the best returns on the money that we have. Now I'm black and blue in the shins from Beth, but.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that.
All
I think Terry's about ready to say something.
Yeah, the ESG funds have very performance, poor performance. And indeed, many investment houses have decided to close those accounts. So we really should be keeping an eye on those. Because, you know, we could usually have one of those accounts closed with losses. So it just, it sort of makes us, we should be asking questions.
We're not in one mutual fund. I'll say that. We're not in one fund that's ESG. They're managing the portfolio overall as ESG. And there are a lot of churches at the Church Episcopal Foundation. A lot of the different entities have decided that that's what they want to do. So I think Episcopal Church Foundation in total has 500, I want to say 500 million in assets under management with State Street Advisors. So I think the fact that, I don't think there's a fund that's going to be shut down. I think that's unlikely because there's a lot of churches in it. Thank you for sharing your opinions about ESG. We'll have to, I feel like that's probably a broader discussion at the vestry and if there's parishioners that want to say. I have also read articles that have said that ESG ended up with, part of it's the political climate that we're in. You're also hearing about at different universities, since there's a Black student union, there's now a bunch of people saying we need a white student union, which feels a little bit less inclined from the parish, I would have to say. There's an LGBTQ fund and groups, so we need to have a heterosexual group. So I think ESG has kind of suffered from some of that in the political climate that we're in. That's my opinion. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that's subjective from an investment perspective. If folks would like to be on the investment committee or have some more conversation with that, that's great. Talk to your vestry member, talk to me.
The investment committee is Mike Warner, Jim Basula, and Janine. So reach out, Paul and Terry.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
The 2%, doesn't that include the outreach that we're going to be doing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it
so
does.
it's 1% for the regional.
Well,
Diocese.
And about
and then the
other ones.
balance.
The
Yeah.
balance.
And the
Yeah.
balance for outreach.
And I want to make a comment on that too. Felicia and I attended a workshop with the Episcopal Church Foundation, and they strongly recommend that churches in particular take up to 3% of the fair market value. It's their recommendation that we take that for mission and ministry. It's a strong, positive message to our members that your money is not just being socked away, it is being used for good. So we recommended that to the vestry, who approved it based on the recommendation from the Episcopal Church Foundation. But that's a prudent thing to use our money.
It's very consistent as far as so I've worked at the three different university foundations in controller and chief financial officer roles prior to starting my own company. And that's how all of if you remember, they talk about endowments, or if any of you have donated to give endowments to either CSU or one of the other universities you've been to. That's what they do. They invest the money and then they take a certain fixed percentage, usually each year, 3%, 4%, 5%, depending upon where they are and what they're doing, to distribute to use in the school's behalf. So it's very standard when there's endowments, that, I'm, talking 100 million and 1.5 billion. We're almost there, but we're a little short of that. But it's a very standard kind of a thing. So it's not unusual at all that we're doing that. Thanks, Jen, for bringing that up. Anything else? I don't want to belabor the numbers for too long, but I want to be sure it's the most that information I feel like people will get most of the year. So I'll be sure I've answered everything. Okay. You're welcome. Need is a very qualified strategist, and she's put in a lot of work this year. We're working to streamline things, so it's not as much work. But thank you so much, Jenny, for what you do. Next are Amanda. Oh, I'm sorry.
Beth had her hand up.
Oh, Beth. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Beth. Beth.
Oh, I just couldn't hear you standing over there.
Just thank you.
Oh, okay. So next are vestry elections, and Becky Scheller has agreed to chair the vestry elections.
Thank you. I'd like everybody at home to please turn your cameras on because we'll be voting by raising your hand. And I want to start just with a couple of kind of policy sort of things. And the first is we have to announce who's running for vestry 30 days in advance. And we didn't get Mark Donovan's name in the epistle quite soon enough. So he will need to be nominated from the floor. So we will do that in just a moment, and I'll call for other nominations at that point. And anybody who's nominated has to agree to serve. So, and then the second thing, I've had a couple of people ask about the nomination of the junior warden. And it used to be that the junior warden was nominated from within the vestry, but the articles, our bylaws were rewritten and accepted in 2020. And Article 4, Section 3 says, the junior warden shall be nominated and elected at the annual parish meeting. It also says, Section 2, the senior warden shall be nominated by the rector and shall be elected at the annual parish meeting. It doesn't say that who nominates the junior warden, which seems to be kind of something we left out. So the last couple of years, Felicia has nominated the junior warden, and we'll go ahead and just go with that precedent. So again, that was just kind of a little bit of an oversight there, but I will now ask Felicia for nominations.
I would like to nominate Jan.
Oh,
Closer and louder, please.
I would like to nominate Jan Friedland to serve as senior warden for a one-year term.
and Jan, do you accept?
I do.
Okay. And for junior warden?
I'd like to nominate Raven Agape to serve as junior warden for a one-year term.
Okay, so we'll vote in just a moment. Well,
Both those nominations.
okay, oh, sorry, you're right, Betsy. Okay, so I've got a second.
Beth, did you get that? Say who's done doing it.
Okay, that's Betsy.
Kelly, second both those nominations.
And then Raven has to agree.
Raven, and Raven accepts? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and vote.
Do you want to renominate Mark or not?
Not yet.
No.
Let's go ahead and vote for the
Way with the-
Beth hasn't done it again.
Beth has a question.
Were there seconds to those motions?
Betsy Kelly seconded both of those motions.
Thank you.
First was Felicia.
So Felicia made the motions and Betsy seconded both of them. My ears are sticking out. It's just down too low. Okay, so all in favor of Jan serving another term as senior warden, please raise your right hand and keep them up, please. Okay, that looks unanimous. Thank you. You may lower your hands. And all in favor of Raven serving as junior warden, please raise your hands. Okay, also unanimous. Thank you very much. Right. And now serving on the vestry, we have a nomination for Sarah Jameson and for Seth Stapleton. Okay, he's standing up. Sarah, you want to stand up? And since they volunteered, I don't.
We still need a motion.
Okay, so we need a motion to accept these nominations. Do I have a Sue Eisenhower is nominating both of these candidates. Do I have a second? Terry Birdsong is seconding. Beth, did you get that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of these two candidates, please raise your hand. Keep them up. Motion passed. Thank you very much. May I have a nomination for Mark
I
Donovan?
move to nominate Mark.
Holly Carroll nominates Mark Donovan for a 2-year term. Do I have a second?
2-year term for what?
Vestry,
Just best.
Oh, best.
a general vestry term. Okay. And Lynn Von Driel, sorry, Pete. Lynn Von Driel seconds that. All in favor, please raise your hand.
In Bondreel.
Okay, and motion passes. Thank you very much. Oh, and I didn't ask for any other nominations and all the seats are filled, so. Thank you very much. Sue moves nomination ceased. Do I have a second? Nancy McDuffie seconds that motion. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all who agreed to serve. Really appreciate it. This is just a time to thank you. We have some gifts and cards for those who have stepped off of ministries this last year. The first was Betsy Perna, but they had to leave early. So Betsy was our vestry clerk and stepped off, rotated off at the beginning of the year, and Beth McKnight has taken her place. So we thank Betsy for her service. Next is Mary Jean Courier, who has been the Flower Chair Committee lead for many, many years. And I have a book. These are all books, just so in case you wondered, has nothing to do with flowers, but has something that is coming your way that I think. Thank you for your years of service. This is for Mark Donovan for serving a year as junior warden. Lynn Von Driel served as a vestry member for 3 years. And Holly Carroll, we did not say this, but we voted Holly Carroll to serve on the vestry, thinking that Monica Foster, who rotated off and moved away, had 2 more years to serve. And lo and behold, we recognized it's just 1 year. So Holly served 1 year faithfully. I don't know if you got it, but Holly Carroll is going to be the chair of the Terry Birdsong and Lori Goodham had overseen EFM for many years, and that is a Herculean effort. Thank you so much for doing that.
Bird song. Okay.
Both of them.
I'm just going to dismiss you with the regular dismissal. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
Thanks be to God. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.